How's it going, everyone? Thank you for clicking on this video. What you're about to watch is an interview, not that much of an interview, mostly just a chat, that I did with Jessica Anderson. She's running for state delegate in Virginia's 71st district, and I happen to live in Virginia, so if she wins her election, all of the votes that she casts are gonna affect me. So I wanted to have a little talk with her and just kind of get a feel for her positions and policies and how she wants to govern. Anyway, if you end up liking what she has to say and you want to further support her, her campaign website will be in the description of this video. You can head over there and read more about her policies or donate to her campaign, whatever you want to do. That's all from me, so enjoy the video and thank you for watching.
I discovered that my ex-husband had lost his employment, and with it, our health insurance. And I did not know actually until I had entered a doctor's appointment with one of my daughters, and they were like, "Hey, your insurance isn't valid." I'm like, "Okay." So navigated social safety nets, mainly Medicaid and SNAP, something that is very at the front of the conversation currently,
All right.
and was on that for roughly 2 years. About 6 or so months after I got approved, I went back into the workforce in a different capacity. I had worked, but I was doing a part-time role. I found a more permanent job. Um, Year after getting that job, got a $5,000 pay increase. Instantaneously lost $7,000 a year in SNAP benefits, food. So that was pretty eye-opening for me. Someone who had lived in kind of this echo chamber of the only people that get these types of benefits are lazy and not working. And I'm like, I'm working full time. I'm doing all the things right. And now I've just lost food for my children. Um, Fast forward, I met and married my now husband. We were married 8 years this September. And for the first time really in my adult life, I was felt financially secure because even in my previous marriage, we were very much a paycheck to paycheck, just trying to get the grind out and make, survive mode all the time. And I got an opportunity to work part-time at the local elementary school in my district. And my daughters, my two youngest, were attending. And yet again, another opportunity to kind of see behind the curtain, recognize severe disparities in my community. I live in a community that a lot of people looking outside in think it's very well-to-do, wealthy, kind of elitist. And the reality is, our families, particularly, are some of the most impoverished families in the area. And that is blaringly obvious when you look into the school division specifically. So, kind of learning this, seeing how underfunded our school division was, not only at the state level, but even in neighboring districts, the policy and politics behind it all, that was really upsetting. Then COVID happened. I got very online, critically online, like a lot of people. Started engaging with some really incredible left-leaning political content creators, educating myself, getting insight to like communities that honestly I just didn't have access to in my everyday life. Started doing more research and doing my due diligence on policy and how it impacts people at the national, state, and federal level, and did some of the breaking news stuff, did some of the de-radicalization stuff. Like I've had a couple growths over the last 4 years online. But yeah, in 2022, I felt like I could be doing more. I'd been doing some local activism in my community, particularly with the school board, but I was like, I could be doing so much more and educating the people that live in my community that it matters most to. So reached out to our local committee for the Dems, realized I was in a good position to run for the state house in 2023. So I signed up, I did it. um, had one of the least funded competitive seats in the district. In fact, it wasn't even deemed competitive by most standards, and other people. Ran a grassroots campaign, knocked 6,300 plus doors, and was supposed to lose by over 6, almost 7 points, lost by less than two. Missed it by 667 votes. Had no TV, had no digital, really had no infrastructure except me and like two staff members. So kind of proved this seat was attainable and that the district was actually moving more bluer and more progressive. And then Harris then, of course, won the district. So now here I am, second attempt, plan to have a different outcome. And yeah, I feel like I'm the quintessential community member, like navigating the social safety nets, working mom, dealing with public school, both as a parent and an employee. And I think that representation is lacking across the nation, but particularly in my district. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like I don't know. I don't know how much this gets talked about, but I feel like another thing that I've seen you demonstrate that it gives me a lot of confidence in your ability to win. Not only the numbers, the numbers are in your favor clearly, as you talked about, but this we talk about this a lot with Trump. Like like Trump is an idiot, right? But what does him a lot of favors is his charisma, right? He can get up on his stage presence, and I feel like you have a lot of that too, where you can get up in front of people, you can talk, and your belief people you have that kind of convincing, believable type of presence, right? That,
Authenticity. I hear.
yeah,
I'm told often that I'm very authentic. Which
yeah,
I mean, what you get is what you see is what you get. Like no matter
yeah,
where I'm at, whether I'm at a town hall, which I had one last night, whether I'm on the front step of your door, or whether I'm making a video on social media. Like I don't really change who I am, and yeah, I think people appreciate that.
yeah. Awesome. Well, as for me, whenever I kind of started in the same vein as you. Like I was a fan of people like Destiny, like watched a lot of his stuff, and then there came a time. It was like kind of like right after Trump got elected. Um, well, I've kind of always wanted to do political content, but I was in the military for a while, and I was like, I'm not gonna end up at a court martial because I was talking shit about the commander in chief on social media. That's yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. But when I got out, I was like, well, now is my it was right after Trump won, re-election or won his election. I was like, okay, well, this is it then. I guess this is my time. So, and as soon as the numbers started racking up and I started, gets having decent views, gaining some following, I knew pretty quickly. I was like, I'm not just gonna I don't want to just use this for money or for ego reasons of like, oh, it feels so good to get 100,000 views on a video. Like I don't want to just use it for that. I want to use it to do something. And I figured a good place to start would be with the politicians, talking to the politicians and helping out the politicians that are going to be actually affecting me particularly. I'd like to broaden out eventually, but a good starting place is the people that affect me. So I interviewed, I did one on Monday with Nicholas Leister, who's running for I don't know if you know who he is. He's running for for VA2, the House seat.
Okay.
And then you obviously, I live in Virginia Beach, right?
Is he running against Kiggins then, right?
Mm,
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
oh God, Kiggins.
I know. I got Whitman. Okay, so look,
Mm, yeah,
we're two of the same vein here. We're not.
yeah,
I'm not a fan.
yeah, yeah. So I live in Virginia Beach, so it made sense to talk to him, and you as well. Like every vote you cast, gonna blow back on me and everyone else that lives in the state, right? So of course.
Absolutely.
That being said, the reason I went, there's 100, there's 100 House delegates, right? There's Democrats that are a lot less known than you, or a lot less famous than you, that would have been more accessible. Not that you weren't, but I could just like, they would have been like, oh yeah, that guy's got way more following than me, even though I'm a delegate. They would have gone here. The reason I wanted to talk to you specifically is because I saw you on Destiny show, and because some of the things you guys talked about left me not like concerned about, like, oh no, not this person getting, more so I was like, ooh, okay, wow, that's something I never thought of. One of the things that you seem very interested in, and you touched on it, is school stuff, your school board stuff. This might not make as much sense for people watching after or people watching live right now. The situation you described with your school board system in your district sounds horrific. That sounds awful.
It's a bit of a cluster. It's a bit of a cluster.
My wife is a teacher, and so
Okay.
I've seen some.
Thank you for her service. Seriously.
So I've seen some similar things where like our school systems are horrible here. I don't know what it is about this place. And one thing I wanted to specifically ask you about is, and you also kind of touched this in your introduction. Virginia Beach is very similar to what you described your district as being, and that people from the outside, it looks very like you're like you got to be rich to live there, and it does feel like that sometimes. Like to live in like I came from Ohio. The house I lived in growing up in Ohio was like 250 grand there, and it would have been like 1.5 million here in Virginia Beach. Just location. So it looks that way from the outside perspective. It is. This is not a wealthy district. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But
No.
we have a couple multimillionaires roaming around here that live in those types of places and those types of houses. And so when that's what you see, that's the impression you get. And I wondered if that's is it similar in your district where there's a couple people that bolster the kind of the economic expectations of your district? Where you're like, oh, that's a wealthy place, but not really.
So there's a lot of history here, which I've gotten super involved with some local nonprofit orgs that are kind of digging deeper into displacement that specifically happened in particularly the city of Williamsburg. So I work in the city of Williamsburg. I live just outside of the city in James City County, but as you point out, we have what we call a unicorn district. So our district is shared. So we have the James City County side, which has its own board of supervisors. Then we have the city of Williamsburg side, which has its own city council. And then we have a collective school system together, and we have one school board. So there is 2 appointed representatives from the city, and there are 5 elected from the county. And it does create a little bit of a cluster because we have 2 different funding partners in addition to the state. And we're not always getting what we ask. So there's that. But to the point you're asking, when people look at the city of Williamsburg, particularly like Colonial Williamsburg area, the neighborhoods very close and within direct walking distance of the city, they are wealthy. Like you said, like we're talking about 500,000 and up. And most of the time it's up. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of the nicer houses right there near the college are 1 million, 1.2, et cetera. I have a house that's literally 2 houses down from the school I work at. It's worth $1.3 million. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. But yeah, so there is great wealth directly in the heart of the city. By and large, these are either a combination of professors living nearby the college that they are currently working at, or people that are elderly that have either have generational homes and wealth, or have moved out from Northern Virginia and like, ooh, like you said, the house I bought here is going to cost way less here in the city of Williamsburg, and it's going to just accrue more and more value. But also a part of the city, and I always joke, but just across the railroad tracks, just outside of walking distance with no crosswalks, are low income townhomes, low income apartment complexes, hotels and motels where a lot of our English language learners or just unhoused people are residing in. We have several Section 8, subsidized federal housing just outside of that little purview that are even gentrified in certain places. And the reality of what people don't know is in the 50s and 60s, these communities that have now been pushed out and still exist in the city limits, they lived in the heart of Williamsburg. The heart of Williamsburg was literally predominantly minority owned and operated businesses. You kind of hear like the Tulsa Massacre, which I didn't learn until I was in my 40s, but you hear about these cities that were just incredibly minority ran and operated, where they had wealth, they had generational wealth, they had property. The city intentionally condemned all of their properties in the 50s and 60s in response to integration, and they were all displaced. Families completely separated, and their buildings, their homes, their businesses were taken over by white ownership and resold and redistributed. And so now we see the product of that years later, where a lot of our roughly 17.5% minorities are literally always on the outskirts of these more high-end, wealthier neighborhoods. And that's also true in James City County. We have pockets of poverty throughout James City County. And then we have neighborhoods that it's a gated community and they're $1 million houses. So there is definitely, but the problem is when people don't understand is the majority of the people attending our schools, the actual families, those are the ones that are middle and lower class.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm seeing every day and that we're advocating for in the school system. They're not the ones that are living in these, by and large, in these well-to-do neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So it is a problem. And then it comes back to like, oh, you should have tons of taxes because you have all these wealthy communities. Well, you literally have people living in these wealthy retirement communities going to school board and board of supervisors meeting. I don't have no kids in school. Stop giving them money.
Yeah.
So there's a problem. There's a disconnect. And so, yeah, that has a really negative impact on our locale funding for public education. It's not prioritized like it should be.
Yeah. I always thought that feels, I talked to my wife about this too. She's not really into politics, but our property taxes got raised last year, right? And she's like, oh, it sucks to see our mortgage payment go up, right? To the difference that has to be made up in the escrow account, right? And she's like, oh, damn taxes. I'm like, no, that's a good thing. People don't think about it like this a lot of the times, but the number one thing, we're not going to live here forever. At some point, when I finish college, we're going to move, right? We're going to piece out of here. I'm going to go to law school after I finish my undergrad, right? So, and there's no law school in Virginia. I mean, there is, but I don't want to go there. So we're going to be out of here, right? So of course, selfishly, we want our property value to stay high. And people don't, it never gets thought of this way, but it just is true. Nothing affects property value like the school system does, right?
Amen.
So whenever she, when she sees the taxes go up, she's like, oh no. And I'm like, no, that's fine. That's good. The more we invest in the school system around here, the higher the property values will be on average, the more benefit to us later down the road. And we don't have kids, right? It's not like I mean, she's a teacher, so it is going to affect her, but she doesn't work in the school, the She doesn't work in the public school where our house is, right? So
Hmm.
technically, yeah, it wouldn't really affect her, but I'm like, no, it's good. And that thought never happened. So when I hear you talk about people like, I don't have any kids in the school system, I'm like, well, do you want your house to stay? Do you want your property value to stay high?
Yes.
Invest in the schools. Shut up. Like,
Yeah,
um,
exactly. And I say it all the time. I don't say the shut up part, but I
yeah,
absolutely am, when I'm talking on the retiree doors or the retiree communities, we have whole neighborhoods that are 55 and up around here. Because we do have a huge elderly population. But when I'm talking to them, whether they like it or not, I make the schools and their success very relevant to the reality of their everyday life. I mean, and not only their property value, but the economy as a whole. If we're not creating an environment where people can live where they work, like we have teachers, we have support staff, we have all these people, we have service workers. They work and they do all this stuff for us here in Williamsburg. And then guess what they do? They go back home where they live in Newport News or York County or Surrey or Charles City, and they spend that money they earned here.
yeah,
We're not getting that money back into our economy.
yeah,
That's a problem. We should be creating an environment where those people can live here and spend the money that they're making off of our businesses, off of our school system.
yeah,
And then on top of that, if we're not producing good members of society out of our school system because we're not prioritizing that, that's going to cause your community as a whole to go down. Businesses aren't going to come here. We're going to see crime rates go up, property values go down. Like all of it is connected. And there's a disconnect with a lot of people. My friend always says, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. And that's true. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, every little thing that we touch and deal with every day is tied to politics. It's tied to a decision that was made by somebody, typically in an elected position. And I think we're proving day and day that have those seats is incredibly important.
absolutely. One of the things you touched on that I've seen to a degree that I didn't even think was possible before I came here. Because, like I said, I came from rural Ohio, right? So the wealth disparity in a small corn town in Ohio is not that it's not that huge, right? Now I will say, like, I do come from I don't try to hide I do come from a very upper class family, so I understand the privilege I had there. That being said, when I came here, oh my God, I didn't realize this living in Virginia Beach showed me like the amount of disparity in such a small little area could be huge. The example I use, which it is true and it is insane to me. When we moved here, obviously, like, my wife's a teacher, she had to interview at a bunch of schools to get a job. The job she ended up taking was at a private school that is right next to a public school. The private school is one of the nicest facilities I've ever. It felt like it felt like I was in like Columbia University. Like I was like, this is like a college. This isn't a high school. Right next door to a public school that is dilapidated to be nice, like falling apart, horrible conditions. And she interviewed at that school too, and she said the same thing about the inside. She did an interview and went and talked to the principal, and she's like talking about walking around and be like, oh my God, like it's the place is falling
The
apart.
infrastructure.
Yeah, it's like it was built 100 years ago and never touched again. And then to take a job at the private school next door where everything, the kids are paying the tuition at her school for a year, kindergarten, like a kindergarten student, their parents are paying like 40 grand a year for them to be there.
I don't doubt that.
And it's just, I'm like, oh man. And I'm talking 100 feet in between these two places. And that kind of disparity is really, it's like, I don't understand how this happens. I do not understand how this can be the case. And then you kind of realize, so I was the reason we're here in Virginia Beach, because I was in the Navy. This is where I ended up, to see like some of my friends, from my ship and from my work center. I know how much they make. I make the same amount of money, and some of my buddies have like 2-3 kids, and I know where their kids are going to school. And then I see the school my wife works at, and she talks about this all the time because it is kind of crazy. She's a big Taylor Swift fan, and one of her students, her dad was one of Taylor Swift's producers. And I'm like,
oh
yeah,
my God.
yeah. And I'm like, it is unhinged to me that I got my buddies over here on the ship. Their kids are going to the school next door, falling apart, horrible place. And then you got the Taylor Swift's producer's kid over here at this $40,000 a year. The only difference between these two people is just the amount of money their parents make. It just doesn't. It never sat right with me. It never felt right with me that these kids deserve nothing. They've earned nothing. I think Destiny, when you talk to him, I vaguely remember him saying a similar thing to you, and he's completely correct. And that's the same belief I hold of like,
This is how he changed his political
yeah,
view,
yeah,
is
yeah,
because of
because
his
of his
own
son,
personal
yeah,
experience with that. Yep.
yeah. But like he's totally right in that of like you didn't do anything to you didn't earn any of this. You're getting it given to you because of who your parents were. It's kind of rich.
Hmm.
It's kind of that's kind of ironic coming from me because like upper class family, but um yeah, it's just that disparity never sat. It still doesn't sit right with me. And so a long-winded way of wrapping all the way around to what can you, what could be done, what do you want to do, and what are you going to try to do to fix an issue like that? Thinking it through, I'm sitting here thinking about the issue. I'm like, okay, this is one of those ones that I don't know what to do. Or there's a
Yeah.
lot of issues where I
Yeah.
don't know what to do. It just doesn't feel solvable. But you're the one out here trying to solve it, right? So what do you
So
got?
it's funny, because to your point, and I'm going to use a different example, not Virginia Beach, but Norfolk Academy. So Norfolk Academy is a one of the most prestigious
Yeah.
private schools in the state. Sits in the middle of one of the most, minority driven communities. I mean, I think the demographic is literally like 44% black to 48% white. I mean, it is pretty
Have you
dead
been on that
even.
campus? You been in there?
Yes, I have my
It's
well. So
ridiculous.
it's ridiculous. And just side note, sidebar, my current husband, because like I said, I'm now in a place where I am financially stable, but my current
Right.
husband's children, who are now grown adults, graduate college, but they went to Peninsula Catholic, which is also a private school in
Right.
Newport News, York County area. And so I went to meets and stuff when they were finishing
Yeah.
up school, several years ago at Norfolk Academy. So I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with a lot of the private college campuses because I went for their different sports. But with that being said, the demographic, like I said, is almost dead even when it comes to black community versus white community. However, Norfolk Academy, it's a 17% black community
Yeah.
within the school system. So what that's telling me is we are not creating an environment where this is accessible equally to the community that it is being surrounded by.
Right.
And I knew people that lived in Williamsburg that were taking their kids to Norfolk Academy because that is how prestigious it was.
Yeah.
They would make that commute. They would burn that, meal funds and gas bill to get those kids to that school because they saw the benefits. And I'm not knocking them. They have access and means. So I think the things that I'm looking at in the role of a delegate is, first of all, we have so much data from JLARC that says we are not meeting the mark of funding at the state level when it comes to K through 12 education. That's a problem. So we need to be making the systems more equitable. Every school division, you should be able to move anywhere in the state of Virginia and have the same class sizes, the same technology access, the same infrastructure, the same number of teachers and resources in regards to like TAs and support staff. There should never be a discrepancy because you live in a different county or jurisdiction within Virginia. And that's something we could be shoring up at the state level with funding formulas. Another issue I think is prevalent, lack of early childhood education. We have incredible innovations when it comes to the medical innovations that we are able to deliver babies a lot earlier and have them survive. That is good. However, that also leads to a higher number of behavioral and learning disabilities that are happening and being more prevalent. And there's clear data showing the correlation that as we become more medically innovated and able to do this, we have seen an uptick in demands with high need when it comes to special education classrooms, IEPs, 504s, et cetera. So knowing that reality tells me that we need early childhood education for ages 3 and 4 universally across the state of Virginia, even more so. One, it's giving kids a foundation. It's giving the parents of those children the opportunity to return to the workforce, especially when we're talking about the lower income families that can't afford childcare and aren't going to make that option. They're going to stay home until their kid gets to kindergarten. And two, we can catch these issues earlier. Right now, we have a huge problem with people that do have either disabilities, whether it be learning disabilities, physical disabilities, problems with speech, whatever the case may be. We're not finding out these issues until they're second, third, fourth, fifth grade. I mean, there's kids learning in high school that they have issues because there's not been these safeguards early on to catch them when it's most prevalent and when we can do the most good. So that's something that I would love to implement. I would love to also make sure, and this is more of a don't let this happen, but the school voucher conversation. I talked briefly about this to Destiny. Um, School vouchers scare the hell out of me. They are simply a way to reallocate taxpayer money into the private schools that are already having massive amounts of money dumped to them. They have no oversight. They have no guidance similar to the state. And they also get to discriminate. They get to pick and choose who they allow to come into their school system. If you've got a blemish from behavioral issue, if you've got an educational disability or a IEP or a 504, they can say, no, thank you. We don't want you to bring down our total. We don't want you to bring down our test scores. And they have the right to do that. So they should not have access to taxpayer dollars. And then at the demise of the public institutions, which is what it's going to be. A lot of people don't understand that we're allocating roughly $12,000 a year per student in the state of Virginia, which honestly is on the lower end when you look at some of the other states that are more progressive and have better quality outcomes for their students. But still, we're putting that out. If you're going to save that money for the state and then give a family a $6,000 check, of which they're not paying annually, by the way, they pay a fraction of what that actual $6,000 voucher is in their own taxes. But now we've taken $12,000 out of the school system that would have covered overhead, teachers, support staff, technology, to give this person $6,000, which they probably already had the means and resources to go to that private school to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the things that I'd like to implement. And when I talk about, obviously funding needs to come from somewhere, I'm a big proponent of the millionaire's tax. We have 272 millionaires that reside in the state of Virginia. There's no reason they should be paying 5.75% in state taxes, the same as someone making $17,001 pays. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
And there's been bills, Delegate Phil Hernandez actually introduced a $1 million tax raise of 10% last cycle, never even made it out of subcommittee. I think with everything happening at the federal level and the needs that we need to meet at the state level when it comes to education as is, I think that's going to be a conversation that might be a little more relevant in the General Assembly to come.
Yeah. I go back and forth on heavy wealth taxes. Mainly not because it's definitely not a principled issue. I would love to have one, right? If you're making $1 million a year, 10% extra on taxes is not killing you. Okay. It's like
Right.
pretending like it is going to is delusion. You're living in a separate reality. If you're going to pretend like the extra 10% is going to kill you if you're making $1 million a year. My fear, and my guess is the reason a lot of these bills have trouble, you said that one didn't even make it out of subcommittee,
Yep.
is that what do you do if you want to push a wealth tax forward? What do you do to prevent the flight of that wealth?
I mean, the reality is 10% in comparison to the other states that are thriving in like the business sector is actually pretty low.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is low. But when you look at a place like Tennessee doesn't have state taxes, right? I think. Like, how do you keep, if there is someone
Tennessee
here
is so low on the totem pole of small business in regards to like success rate and number of small businesses per capita. What's funny is like, and this is the reason why I'm a big proponent of revoking right to work. When we look at the top 10 states that have the highest number of small businesses per capita and the highest rate of success to basically from the point that they apply for a small business license to them actually coming to fruition and then passing kind of the do or die timeline where a business is going to make it or break it.
Yeah.
The top 10, 5 of them are right to work and 5 of them are not. So that tells me right off the bat, the right to work isn't the metric.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. 5 that are considered right to work, 3 of them have a minimum tax rate of $15 an hour. All 5 of them allow collective bargaining for the public sector. We do not. We rank 29th on that list. So, yeah. So my argument, I guess, to the millionaire tax conversation is, like you said, it is a blip on the radar. And if we're doing other things to incentivize small businesses here, which I think we do a good job of that, but I think we could do better. But it's just the fact that I personally don't see people going here. We have a continuous workforce because of our military infrastructure. We always see a high number of people that are both active duty as well as retirees. Retirees love to come here. We continue to be a home for both northern states that are tired of the cold weather, as well as even northern parts of our own state that are tired of the high prices in Nova and the DMV. So I think there's a lot of incentives to Virginia that would, I don't think that adding 4.25% to a specific demographic, which again makes up a fraction of our entire, I mean, we are a state of over 8 million and we're talking about just over 250,000 people. And that's if they actually have a gross of $1 million. So again, when you call someone $1 million, that means kind of like what their worth is. That doesn't necessarily mean what they bring home. So the numbers are going to skew a little bit. I don't personally see it being at the detriment. Not with what we're doing and not with the fact that within those top 10 states that are producing really well small business wise, 6 of them are blue states. Like, and they have significantly higher tax rates than we do, and they're also putting a lot more um, high quality benefit programs out at the state level. Like, I always look at Massachusetts as a great guide. They have a state funded healthcare program. They have obviously their Medicaid and Medicaid expansion that's implemented from the federal government. And then they also have, Obamacare, ACA. They have it all in a centralized healthcare database that literally caused, one, the ability to go to one location and access and find out what you qualify healthcare wise, but two, has caused their state to have a 2.4% uninsured rate. That's incredibly low. And that's something that I feel like every state should be striving for, and they're just not. And like, we have states that are getting it right, that have very similar demographics and population size. And I feel like we're ignoring some of the positive things they're doing to benefit their communities and their businesses and their, lower and middle class communities. And, I think it's just having a good conversation about these issues and educating not only voters, but like even the people within the own elected body that don't seem to want to pay attention to those types of factors.
All right. Last question on anything tax related. We'll run
Yeah.
away from that as fast as we can. When you say everything worked out and you actually were able to implement some sort of get legislation passed to implement some sort of millionaire's tax, how do you make sure that extra money that's coming in now gets to the right places, like the school, into the public school systems and into healthcare? And how do you make sure that the things that need funding get funding when you implement a new tax like that?
So first of all, if we remove the trigger law around Medicaid expansion, that means that we are required to protect that program because right now it's been approved since 2019. So if say we lose 5 or 10%, currently Medicaid expansion is paid 90% at the federal level. That's a lot of money. But there's a very high chance that we're going to lose anywhere from 10 or so percent of that funding through this incoming big beautiful bill. And that, of course, doesn't hit till 2027 when we're talking about the Medicaid part of it. So obviously, if we remove the trigger law, that kind of throws us into a situation where we have to find the funding. So there's really no question that money, the excess money that we're going to be finding through the new recurring revenue, is going to go into that. In regards to education, I personally think we need to put some policies for it. There's tons of bloat. I feel like there should be a max, and it can be based on locale, because I know some locations like Nova has a different price point. It kind of raises our whole medium wage up, quite honestly, for the state. But there needs to be like a set rate where these superintendents and some of these higher administrative people that are in, say, central offices buildings that are just asinine, and they're not getting money put in the classroom. I would love to see policy in place to ensure that those funds are getting directed where they really need to be, and that is in the classrooms and in the buildings, not in kind of the administrative bloat that, while necessary, I feel like their wages are getting higher and higher at at the demise of the people that are actually in the classrooms doing the hard work. I think the other thing, like, I'm a big proponent of eliminating different forms of tax that directly impact middle and lower class, like sales tax, like the car tax. I think those are great things to try to eliminate at the state level, because that's going to put money in people's pockets in everyday, setting. But at the same time, that's why things like the millionaire tax are even more critical, because we need to make sure we're offsetting those funny money somewhere. We can't get rid of one thing without having the balance on the other side of that conversation. I'm excited to kind of dig into the budget as a whole and kind of see where we're spending money. That budget is huge, and I think it's grown and grown and grown over the years. And I think at this point, a lot of people don't even know where money is being allocated, by and large. And I think that it's high time that we have some people getting a little more creative and innovative, and just paying a little closer attention to where funding is going. Because I think we're getting into a point that under this administration, at least for another few years, a lot more pressure is going to be put on the state when it comes to funding really important things.
It does seem that way, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, leaving the tax things behind. One of the things, I think probably like my main area that I reside in is, for one, just like the debating MAGA people. That's my jam.
It is your jam. I
But
enjoy it.
in the subsection of that is, my favorite issues to speak on are constitutional issues. I love the Constitution. I made a promise that if it came to it, I would die to protect it, and I wasn't joking. Like, it seems like a lot of the veterans I know were joking when they said that, but I wasn't. That includes all the amendments, including the second. And one of the biggest criticisms, or not, it is it is a straw man. Like they are lying when they do it. But one of the biggest criticisms I get when I'm making my why due process is important argument. The counter I'll get from MAGA people is, okay, oh, so you care about all the amendments except for the second. I'm like, nope, you don't want to know the amount of guns sitting in my safe downstairs. Can you?
I mean, former military.
Yeah, can you dispel that clear straw man that we as left leaning people tend to get smacked upside the head with all the time? I heard you speak on this a little bit when you talked to Destiny. So I know I'm not walking myself into a trap here when I ask this question, but can you do something to dispel that straw man?
Yes. So, as I pointed out, I was married for 13 years to a very conservative Christian family, avid hunters, avid shooters. My daughters knew how to shoot a gun as young as 12 years old. And I still have firearms currently, my husband as well. So obviously I'm a proponent of protecting 2A. I want to make sure that I have access to firearms as well. I think it is a bit of a myth, and I think it's something similar to the abortion topic. I will give Destiny this. I do think both of those topics get hijacked on the opposing side to like make these culture kind of conversations. There's no substantial policy across the political spectrum on the left being introduced and pushed that is trying to remove guns out of the properties or
Mm.
hands of individuals.
Yeah,
Now, I know that there
it's
has,
always
yeah,
you want to confiscate all our guns and you want to abort babies at 9 months. Like,
correct.
no.
Neither of those things
Yeah,
are accurate.
yeah.
I recognize that on the local or on the state and federal, there has been conversations, and we've had a previous, assault rifle ban or whatever you want to call it. We also saw a downtick of mass violence during that 10-year period. But I always point to the fact that even within those confines of those outliers of laws that get introduced at the state and local level, which some states obviously have them in place, um, it does not change the fact that you still have access to firearms. It is not changing the fact that even in those states that have those laws in existence, there are countless people in those states that have access to firearms. We are not trying, and I like I said, I don't know any Democrat that is trying to ban all guns. We have more guns than people. The concept of even trying to do that is like insane. Like it's not even plausible.
Yeah.
It's just not
That's what
plausible.
I was saying. It literally cannot happen. So I don't know why we're.
It,
Yeah.
it cannot happen.
Yeah.
It's not like we're Australia shortly after a few shootings, and again, the percentage of guns is far below the percentage of human beings. We're not there. We have outpaced our human population with our guns, and you cannot in good conscience actually have any realistic, I mean, unless, I mean, if anything, I would put it at Trump's door to do something like that before any Democrat. I'll be 100%,
Yeah.
because he's creating a police state, and that kind of police state, people that have access to firearms, everyday citizens, that makes it very difficult to have a police state.
Yeah,
So
and also
I think
just
it's a new
not
point.
to, yeah. Also, like to implement a policy like that, to say, okay, yeah, we're gonna do the Australia method. We're doing mandatory gun buyback across the board. No one has guns anymore. Part of doing that, you'd have to violate the Second Amendment. And not only like people like when people talk about the Second Amendment, a lot of times they're speaking about it in like kind of these nebulous terms because nobody likes to read Supreme Court decisions. I found that out the hard way debating MAGA people. Nobody reads anymore.
Yeah.
But the concept of, for one, the concept of the Second Amendment applying to like private ownership is kind of relatively recent in Supreme Court precedent.
Yep, 2008.
Yeah, but even on top of that, it is Supreme Court precedent now. It is recent, but it is precedent. So to confiscate every gun from every person in the country, you would have to violate the Second Amendment as laid out by the Supreme Court. I only mention that to add on to the idea that the only person that I can really see doing something like that would be Trump, because Trump's the only person that I've the only politician I've seen, at least, well, not the only politician, he's got all his sycophants in the Republican Party, but he's the only president that I've seen in my lifetime, and before my lifetime, that just does like that sentence, what I just said, the idea that to do this, you'd have to violate the Constitution. That sentence means nothing to that man. That what I just said doesn't mean a thing. So yeah, the talking point of they just want to steal our guns, like your guy's the one that's most likely to do it, because he's the one that's most likely to say, I don't care what the Constitution says.
I mean, he said it. I mean, like we saw the conversation with Pam Bondi during the shooting during his last time.
Yeah.
We've seen the conversation in that same conversation with Mike Pence. Like, it's on record. Like, it's not like we're making things up. Like, this man has quite literally said, let's take the guns first and let's
Yeah.
eliminate due process. And, and clearly he is a full fan of eliminating due process. We're watching it play out in real time.
Yeah.
So to pretend like the Democrats are the ones kind of making these demands is laughable at this point.
Mhm.
I mentioned too that there was a bill issued at the state level, and the initial authoring of the bill did say a mandatory buyback, or no, the way the wording was, it basically kind of outlined if you still own this firearm by this date, you could be found guilty. And I don't know, I'm not okay with that, because that is by definition forcing a buyback. I am okay with a bill that is focusing on one particular style, and only if it is like your grandfather did. And grandfather in has to be the norm,
Yeah.
because that gives people the ability to continue to maintain and could keep the current firearms they have. And really the issue is going beyond when we see issues of like mass violence or, mass casualties with these types of firearms. It's because someone got access to it within like a 24-hour period of realizing they want to do really horrific things. There was no wait periods. I mean, even the state of Virginia, you can get a long gun. And if you don't have a record and you're 18, which, hello, your record that you might exist is all closed because you're 18.
Yeah.
It's very easy. And so, I'm a proponent of safe storage bills. I'm a proponent of wait periods. I think those are really sound things that actually Republicans that I speak to at the doors are also on board with. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the things that we're looking to do, one, do not violate the Second Amendment, but two, are pretty much bipartisan, supported by voters.
Yeah.
And I think that, but again, they try to do the slippery slope argument to turn what we're trying to do, which is very popular, and create it and turn it into something that it's not.
It's hilarious that how they love the slippery slope argument when it comes to something
Hmm.
like a safe storage law, but when it comes
Yeah.
to removing due process from non-citizens, the slippery slope argument doesn't apply anymore. Which, like, and the slippery slope argument, like, that's not me attacking the slippery slope argument broadly. Actually, I fully believe in the slippery slope argument. I think there are some slippery slopes that once you're on, you're not getting off. Like, there's no way
Right.
to get off. But safe storage laws aren't. That's not it. That's not where. If there was ever a time to apply the slippery slope argument, it's not there. It's
Yeah.
let's create an entire class of people in this country that don't have rights. That's the slippery slope argument. Because
Yeah.
what stops you from taking someone that shouldn't be in that class of people and just putting them in that class of people? What happens when they?
But we're watching that. We have
Yeah,
illegal documents.
yeah,
And then, so now what are they doing? They're taking legal status and visas away from people that did it the right way.
right.
And they're now saying, no, they're illegal. But they weren't a week
Yeah,
ago, a
yeah,
day ago, a month ago.
yeah. They're illegal
So
because you
yeah,
made them illegal. Yeah, no, you're
right.
right. You're completely right. You touched on it slightly, but I wanted to ask because again, this a lot of this is just me picking up off of your conversation that you had with Destiny, because like I said, I watched that video and there was things that I wanted to go deeper with that you guys didn't get to.
Yeah.
One kind of interesting question that I wanted to ask you. So you brought it up with him, but we did see not that long ago in Virginia an assault weapons ban pass, and then be vetoed
Mhm.
without a grandfather clause. And I
Yes.
wanted to ask, if you were in office at that time, would you have voted yes to that bill?
That one, no.
No, because of the grandfather clause.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair
I,
enough.
I just I just have a problem. I just have a problem with creating policy that is forcibly taking someone's firearm. And I feel like that's what that does.
Yeah.
The secondary bill that was introduced in the past session had the grandfather clause. I would vote for that one.
Okay, that's all
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. You talked about, like, cause I heard about that, like, when it happened, like, oh god, Virginia passed out an assault weapons ban. Damn. And then I saw you talk about it, but you didn't say whether or not, like, you did say negative things about not having a grandfather clause, but I was like, she didn't answer whether or not she would have voted for it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I don't want my guns taken away either. Okay. It's the
I mean, I don't have ARs, but
yeah,
I have standard pistols. But I
yeah,
mean, it's just, I know the impact of that type of legislation. We have a huge farm population out here, a lot of rural communities, and they do own those types of firearms. And you are not going to get a good response by telling them that after a certain timeline, they're now going to be convicted felons for
yeah,
maintaining the
for
firearms they've
keeping them.
had
Yeah,
for decades. And I just don't think that's a good precedence to set.
yeah. I mean, and it's also, like, the precedent in this country is, like, generally speaking, when a new law passes, you can't retroactively
Correct.
apply it. You don't go back to people that have broken this law in the past, or this law that didn't exist in the past, and punish the people. So I don't see why that wouldn't carry over to firearms laws. If you're going to ban a class of firearms, you're going to ban something that's okay. We can talk about that, but what I will not talk about is retroactively applying it to people that already have those things. When I say will not talk about it, I'll talk about it, but I'm not going to, it's going to be from the stance of fighting against it. All right. Just wanted to ask that for the segment. All right. Moving on to non-gun things. Generally speaking, Virginia's gun laws are like, Virginia is not the type of place where I would be worried about negatively affecting gun legislation. I love my guns, and this is not the state. I'm not.
Military complex, massive here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, so this is a humongous military state. This is not the type of place where I'm shaking in my boots about getting my rifles taken. So it's not that big of a deal. Moving on to the way more broad things, and now these might be not unfair questions, but the answer might just be I'm not going to be able to do anything, and I kind of understand that. You're running for a state office,
delegate,
not federal. What do you think, if anything, the Virginia House and the Virginia Senate can do to fight back against the horrific policies we're seeing coming down from the federal government?
Yeah. And so fun. I mentioned earlier, I had a town hall last night, and a lot of the questions I got very similar to this are questions that, by and large, we can pass policy to kind of combat what they're doing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the biggest safeguard against the current administration as a state is going to be both our governor and our AG. Our governor to publicly push back, and then the AG to publicly hold them accountable, the federal government accountable in a court of law.
Which is why we need to elect Spanberger, because Youngkin sucks. Sorry.
Yes. And I think Youngkin is actually trying to do some pretty significant damage on his way out.
Yeah.
That is not even being
talked about
on a media stage. But, I look at Jason Mayer's great example. We lost, $300,000 in funding for protection of Jamestown settlement, and particularly the architectural or the archaeological work that's being done there. And the fact that as it stands right now, based on the rising water concerns, 5 years, all that work will be gone if we do not start making some pretty big inroads. We are talking about $400,000 that was stripped. Both of these unconstitutionally unlawful. They were congressionally approved funding that we had already been given as a state. $400,000 to broadband infrastructure expansion in both Southside and Southwest Virginia. So your neck of the woods, and then Southwest Virginia. So that money was just illegally canceled. Just a few days ago, there was another announcement of $7 billion nationally from the Department of Education that was frozen, terminated. My district alone, my one school district, that impacts us by $525,000, over $500,000. That's 3% of our budget. That's massive. Especially when we talk about the fact the locales aren't paying their fair share. Now we've lost $500,000. So we have no attorney general right now that is going to the court system and saying, hey, you unlawfully took this money. This is our money. Give it back. He's literally like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Signing the end of letters to Costco about stop being woke. It's the fact that those two seats are critical. And I mean, I will say, even though the House has a little impact on the federal mandates that are coming down the pipeline in this realm, having that majority ensures that when we have the people at the top doing the right thing in the courts, we are passing good policy to benefit the people at the local level, so that we are shoring up the funding and making those strides that we need to make when those programs and all these things start getting hit. So, I mean, I do think it's all of the above. But yeah, there is a limitation as a state assembly on what we can do.
I wanted to ask, but you generally, and it's not really something that people think about very often. I see people like yourself get asked questions like I see state government people get asked what are you going to do to fight back against Trump? And I'm like, do you not know how our system works? Or you want to I'm like, they can't do a whole lot.
No.
Except for, and you mentioned governor and AG. AG is one of those funny positions where governor doesn't have this issue. Everyone, well, not everyone, but generally you probably have an idea of who your state governor is and kind of what they stand for. But AG kind of gets overlooked, but you don't realize how important that position. That is a vital position in your state government. One of the things that was really eye-opening for me about that, or I've always kind of had the conception of that, but where it really hit me really hard is with the Trump trying to just delete a section of the 14th Amendment with an executive order. And you see a lot of states that are going to be affected by this suing the federal government. And I look to our AG and I'm like, we're not suing nobody over something. Like, it's just not going to happen. There's no universe in which you see a lawsuit coming from the state of Virginia over birthright citizenship. That's not happening.
Nope.
Not under this attorney.
Nope.
So, yeah, that really slapped me upside the head. I was like, damn, that AG is a vital role, because stuff like that you'd want to, I would want to be able to proudly say, like, my state is suing the government over this.
Yep.
But that's just not something I'm going to be able to say until November next year. Well, not
Yep.
November, but
Until Jay Jones is in that seat.
Actually want to take one step back. We got a couple minutes left. I want to take one step back because something just hit me like a truck. I want to start asking every single politician that I talk to this question, because I think it is so important. Nobody says anything about it. You're the perfect person to talk to about this because of your experience in the school systems. You're very heavily involved in that realm. How much does the public school curriculum, how much is that affected by the state? How much hand does the state government have in what your kids are actually taught in school?
Pretty significantly. So your state basically dictates what your standardized testing looks like, which ours is called an SOL, Virginia SOLs. So that is pretty much dictated by our state Department of Education. Also, the state is the one funding and supplementing the locale. So, I mean, obviously, how much funding you're getting as a district from the state is going to impact the level of what your infrastructure looks like, what your technology looks like, how many staff members you have in the classrooms and in the buildings. But yeah, for curriculum, we have laws that are passed to say what accounts for an AP credit, what accounts for, a standard diploma, an advanced diploma. Like, all of those things are outlined at the state level. The only thing, and this is, I'm glad you asked this, and I talked about this briefly on Destiny, but I get so annoyed, and I don't think Destiny realized this, which I was kind of surprised. I'm so annoyed by how many people think that the federal government, the federal Department of Education, decides our curriculum. I'm like, no.
Painfully stupid. Yes.
Painfully stupid. The only thing that they put in place is that they do require every state to have a standardized form of testing.
Right.
And and they do have like metrics that they want you to meet when it comes to the literacy and math part specifically, which is why you see us have like state report cards on those two specific things. But like, our state decides, that we have the Virginia SOL for, fourth grade and beyond when it comes to social studies and history. We decide whether or not we're going to have an SOL for every curriculum. And then, like, certain even school divisions have a little bit of leeway in the fact that they can say, oh, you passed your SOL, so now you're exempt from your state, your exam in that class.
Yeah. And
you're just going to get a pass. So like, we have so much control at the state and local level when it comes to curriculum. I know this past session, they introduced a bill that did pass. I'm pretty sure Youngkin vetoed it, and my opponent voted against it. But it was to allow for African studies. Fun fact, African American history is American history. But the AP course to count towards an advanced diploma. They voted against that.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I'll never understand. So one of the pretty neat things, I don't know if that's a great way to describe it. One of the neater things about high school is that your senior year is like so free. You're such a free individual in your senior year. I took a lot of AP classes in high school at in junior and senior year, and I thought that was so cool. Like, to me, I'm like, this is so awesome. You're telling me, like, actually, you go in for your meeting with your guidance counselor about what class you have to take next year, and they're like, oh, you have like 3 open slots. What do you want? I'm like, really? I can just choose. That's so cool. So to see like votes against offering AP, why? For what reason? What's the logic there? You like, just if a kid wants to take it, let the kid take it. Shut up. Like, I don't understand. Why are we doing? Yeah, no, I'm all with you on that. Okay, I wanted to follow up. I wanted you to lay that out as the follow up. Would you support? Please say yes. Would you support a bill to make, because the states the states have control over what gets taught in school? Would you support a bill to make civics a mandatory class in high school?
Well, yes.
Please. It grosses me out. It is disgusting to me. The amount of people that are just unaware of the most basic things. And so if I told you, you would throw up if I told you the amount of people that the amount of MAGA people I've
No, I've
debated.
listened. I've heard.
Yes, the
I've
amount
heard
of
them.
MAGA people that I've debated that are fully convinced that federal law supersedes the Constitution. If it's gross. It's disgusting. Civics. If there's any one policy that I'll fight for until I die, it is on the state level. It is making civics mandatory.
So right now, by and large, in the state of Virginia, and I don't think it's changed, but given I am also 26 years separated from high school. But civics was a requirement in eighth grade. That is what I took in eighth grade. I took eighth grade civics. Fun fact, Mr. Sinners was literally my teacher and my mother's teacher. But it was boring as hell. And so I think two parts. One, I think civic absolutely needs to be there needs to be another form of civics being introduced in high school when kids are a little older.
Yeah.
And maybe a little
upper level
closer
concepts.
to that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, a little closer to that political engagement period of like, I'm almost going to be 18. Like my daughter's going to be 18 her senior year of high school. She gets a vote for me. Yay. But like, so like that kind of information I think is really vital to kind of reintroduce or kind of revisit when they're getting close to it. But I also think, and this is something that I think education as a whole has really lost the plot on, and I accredit some of that to the way SOLs have been done, standardized testing has been done, is we've lost a lot of innovative practices in our school system.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your wife can speak to this.
Yeah.
You know, I know a handful of teachers that do a fantastic job, but it is their life. They don't have kids. Like the ability for them to be innovative in their role. My fourth grade teacher comes to mind at my school, who is just incredible. But it is hard to do. And it is a big ask, especially for a lot of our teachers who are just making ends meet, who have kids that have their own at home, that, you know, they can't dedicate that level of like time sometimes to that role. But that lack of innovation and making the educational process more hands-on has created an environment where we are teaching to test and not teaching to retain.
Yeah.
And I would really love to see a shift. And I don't, you know, I'm really excited that Virginia literacy has gone back to kind of revisiting the way we were doing things prior. I think that's huge. And I know that we're still kind of navigating that path because it was something we went back to. But, you know, I feel like if we're going to do a civics class, let part of the requirement be to have a mock election. Let part of the requirement, you know, like create an environment in these classrooms where you are personally engaging with the process that you're learning about.
Yeah.
And I think getting back to that kind of way of educating would be so beneficial to the young people growing up. We have a learned incompetency in this nation. And I did debate. I was in the debate sphere for quite some time on TikTok. It was my favorite place to be until I got more politically engaged, you know, on the ground. But it was so disheartening to people not to understand how policy is implemented, and then the time frame and timeline it takes to actually see that policy come to fruition. Like the number of people that you talk to that blame Biden for inflation and gas prices. And I'm like, okay, but what about the OPEC deal? Wait, what about the tariffs implemented? What about COVID? Like you gave Trump a pass on COVID his whole last year, but yet you don't recognize that we still had a supply chain disruption upwards of till 2022 that had a huge impact on our inflation rate. So like, it's just the fact that people are so in the like, if it's touching me right now, I'm just going to look and see who's in the White House and I'm going to be like, yep, that's who did it. And so there is this disconnect on like how policy trickles down, and the time frame that it takes for it to actually have a physical and fiscal impact on us as, you know, constituents or whatever.
Yeah, just the amount of misunderstanding and misinformation and just lack of understanding in general of how like our system actually works just is so disheartening to see, especially because I'm like, man, your vote counts as much as mine does, man. When I talk to a person like that, I'm like, yeah, but it comes up all the time with the immigration stuff of, you know, people, they'll have read the text of like the Alien Enemies Act, for example. And in the Alien Enemies Act, in the text, there is no due process requirements like in that law. Technically, like it gives the president, you know, very wide sweeping authority, and they'll use that. You know, I'll get hit with that as like evidence that, the federal government doesn't have to give people due process if they're using the Alien Enemies Act to deport them. And I'm like, even you saying that conveys such a disgustingly sad misunderstanding of how our legal system works. The fact that your example of why these individuals don't have to be given due process is the text of the federal statute versus you're telling me that you're not even incorporating the Constitution into your understanding of how these things work. It's so sad. And yeah, and like you said, I think if mandating a civics course in high school around that junior or senior year would be so good for a litany of reasons. For one, you can get into upper level concepts like that of, how does this work start to finish? You do your elections, your new representatives, they pass laws, and then how do these laws get implemented? It feels so needed, especially right now. It feels like a thing. So that's one thing where I'm like, if there's anything, when I talk to, state government people, if I get the chance to more in the future, that's one of the things I want to just yap about. Like, please, can we make this happen? Please, just let's make it work.
Yeah.
Okay. Did want to comment on one thing. It is funny that the lack of understanding of how long some of these things take to implement. You mentioned, my wife has to fly to Atlanta for a teaching conference this summer. And so she had to go get a real ID, right? So she could fly.
Right.
She didn't have one yet. And I had to get one too. I didn't have, because I always use my military ID. But now I'm not, and I can't do that anymore. We're standing in line, and she's like, why? Like, who passed? Was this Trump or Biden that did this? And I'm like, the law that's making, like, you don't understand, the law that's making it this mandatory was passed in like 2005. Okay, like it's
right.
Like, this law has been on the books forever. Okay, it just hasn't
been.
We're just now getting around
implemented.
Yeah, we're getting around to implementation now, 20 years later. So there does seem to be like a really large lack of understanding of like how long government things take to move. It takes a minute. Okay. And so we have this logic of like, we'll just blame who is in office. Almost never makes sense. It's very rare that doing that is actually accurate. Like, sometimes, sure. Like Trump right now, when it comes to the current immigration policy, it's like, oh no, that's all him. He did that. All right, well, he did that. No one else had anything.
State, all him.
All him. That was all him. But yeah, when it's like inflation, like economy stuff is a great example of like most of the time, it doesn't work to just solely lay it at the feet of whoever's in office right now, because this stuff probably, whatever's causing this, probably got passed a decade ago, to be honest with you.
Correct.
So that happens a lot. Okay. That being said, that's all I have to talk to you about. Tell the people where they can how they can help you, how they can support your election bid.
Okay, I'm going to add one more thing because I think it's important.
Yeah, go. Yeah, whatever you.
So in Virginia, we have a really difficult process to get a ballot measure on your ballot to amend our Constitution. Okay. So for those that don't know, in Virginia, you have to have a ballot measure proposed in the House or the Senate, has to pass that body, go to the Senate, pass that body, and then you have to have a whole new election.
It has to pass the next election too. Ugh.
Yes. And then once you have a newly elected body, which we will have in January, it has to pass again with just a majority vote, so 50% or more, or 51%. And then the governor has no say in it, this governor has no impact. As soon as it passes for a second time, it goes on the ballot immediately in that next election year. So the hope is obviously we're going to pass it in January, and it'll be on your ballot November 3rd, 2026, which is my birthday, my 45th birthday. But anyways, so we have three that are on, up for grabs. The abortion conversation, protecting reproductive rights at the the state level into our Constitution, enshrining it, voter restoration rights for former felons that have served their time, and then marriage equality. So making sure that same-sex marriage is recognized and protected under our Constitution. I just want to say, and I say this all the time because I think this is an important way to present these amendments as someone who is running for office and running in a district that is predominantly purple. I mean, I recognize where I'm at. It is a competitive seat for a reason. As a delegate, I do not get to vote for any amendment to enshrine it. That is not my role. I get to vote so that you can vote for it and enshrine it as the populace, as the constituency. We are simply giving the power to the voters. When a Republican, because that is the only people that have voted against any one of these three amendments, when a Republican votes against these amendments, they are not voting against it because they don't want to enshrine. They are voting against it because they do not trust the voters to make the decision they want them to make, period. So I just bring that up because this election and maintaining the majority that is a really relevant reason on why we have to maintain our 51 plus majority. Because if we don't, these amendments will die and they will have to go through a whole new rigmarole after another election. And we don't want to see that happen. But where you can find me, super easy. I have a website. I also have a link tree. Like if you go to any of my socials, my link tree is there with tons of information. But my website is JESS, the number 4, VA.com. I have a donation link there. I have, if you're in the area and you want to volunteer, tons of volunteer opportunities. I host tons of events like my town halls, like meet and greets. Those are all listed there as well. So if you are in the 71st district or if you're nearby and just want to participate, a lot of opportunities. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And I have pretty much Jess Anderson for VA is my social handle on all social media. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I think it's a hellscape. I can't go back,
Yeah,
but I'm everywhere else.
If you're watching this as a video after, everything she just talked about will be in the description. So just go down and click on links.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well,
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you coming out to talk. And
Yes.
best of luck in your election. I'll be supporting, even though I don't live in your district, can't vote, but I'll be voting for whoever's. I don't even know who's running for the. I don't know if you know who's our blue person.
So Virginia
here.
Beach is spread across a couple different districts. It may be Michael Fagan's. Does that sound familiar?
Maybe. I don't know. I should look. It's hilarious.
Go look it up. Go look it up, Andrew.
It's hilarious. Well, because like for certain people, I'm like it doesn't. I'm voting for I'm voting blue. It doesn't actually matter technically, because it's not gonna. If I talk to the person and they have example, if the person was like again, I already told you I actually do care pretty deeply about the Second Amendment, but if I looked at the candidate running for our seat and they were like, we gotta ban all the guns, which that doesn't happen, right? Democrats aren't like that. But if he was, I still vote for him. Like it doesn't matter.
Because you're like, it's not happening.
Yeah, MAGA's gotta go. And that includes MAGA's not just Trump and his cabinet. MAGA is every Republican that's standing by letting this shit happen,
Yeah. I will say if it is Michael Fagan's, love him. He is running against, I know he's running in the Virginia Beach area. That's why I just bring him up. And his seat is pretty competitive. He is an incumbent, but it's a pretty competitive seat. He's running against a former delegate, Tim Anderson, who is a current lawyer, and he is a sycophant MAGA who just espouses propaganda on his social media all day, every day. He's actually got a pretty large following online, but he's a mess. So yeah, we got to keep that seat.
Yeah. I'll look into it, and I'll DM that whoever it is and see if they want to talk to.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
awesome.
I super appreciate it. Thank you so much. And good luck. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Stay connected. And I'll keep watching you debate all the MAGA people.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right.
Have a
bye.
good one. Bye.
You too.
All right. Well, that was fun. If you live in the Williamsburg area of Virginia, you better be fucking voting for her. God damn it. Okay. I better see an I voted sticker on your forehead in November of 2026. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and if you're still here at the end, you must have either really liked the content or you are a very dedicated hate watcher. Either way, please like, comment, and subscribe to appease the algorithm overlords. And I'd like to give a super special thank you to my YouTube channel members and TikTok and Twitch subscribers right over here. If you'd like to become a channel member, you can click the join button down below and gain access to a special role in my Discord server, the ability to watch these YouTube videos up to a week early, and have your name shouted out at the end of videos like this. Becoming a YouTube member or subscribing on TikTok or Twitch is the best possible way to support me directly, and I deeply appreciate each and every single one of you that chooses to do so. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your day.